Greetings, legionnaires. Today I want to elaborate a bit on drugs, supply demand, market forces, alcohol, and whether it's a good idea to forbid things or not. Before I begin, I would like to, as I do sometimes, quote Tywin Lannister and say that a good king knows what he knows and knows what he does not know. And I'm no expert on drugs. What I do know is that there should be a distinction between marijuana and other drugs simply because there are, in certain cases, medical uses for marijuana. So I'm leaving that there, so just keep that in mind. However, I want to take this opportunity to talk a bit about the market forces of supply and demand. And I want you to keep this supply and demand. Wow, look at my forearms. Fucking glorious, if anything. Okay, the main point of this video is actually to admire my forearms. But yeah, keep in mind, supply demand, all time. Am I for legalizing drugs? Am I for forbidding drugs? Am I for forbidding alcohol? Let us, as always, true friends, look at history to show the way how humans react. This is also an important lesson. If you want to see how people usually react to a certain happening, as it were, just look at, historical examples of such. So we can look at the area of forbid. I don't know what you call it in English, but we had it in Sweden and in America and some other nations. The United States of America, that is, where you tried to forbid alcohol. Now, there was a demand. They tried to create a little barrier here, separating supply and demand. Now, the thing is, what happened? Did people stop consuming alcohol? No, because there was still this huge demand for it, because people like to get drunk. I think it's really, really degenerate, and I think no one who's watching this should participate in such degenerate behavior. If you do, stop right now. So what happened was that smuggling increased in America. It became a lucrative initiative for gangsters to participate in the smuggling and outlawed brewing of said alcoholic beverages. So what happened was not that people stopped using alcohol, unfortunately, but that the supply met demand outside of the law, because realize that this is supply and demand are extremely hard to separate. Supply and demand will find a way. Just like a romantic love will find a way. No, but yeah, keep that in mind. It's really hard to separate the two. So even if you forbid something, and if there's still a demand, it's really hard to stop it, basically. So then we have the option of letting the revenue of the drug sales or the alcohol sales. Like in Sweden we have the following, which I'm a great proponent for. We have the Systembolaget. So the state owns the right to sell liquor. So the revenue of a detrimental thing goes to the state, and then the state can spend it on, free education and healthcare. Or as in Sweden's case right now, spend it on accepting rape refugees who will be detrimental to society. But either way, in a perfect society, this revenue from a bad drug will obviously go to good things. So that is my take on that whole thing. I'm not a proponent of forbidding things per se, but if you can control it and utilize that negative force to something good. So we could legalize drugs and have it, controlled directly under the state, so that the revenue of the fucking idiots who use it does not go to criminal gangs but goes to the state instead, and the state can utilize it for fun things. Then we get rid of, you take a source of income from these criminal gangs and give it to the state instead, and that's the benefit of legalizing drugs. Now keep in mind, I'm straight edge here. I'm still a great proponent of reducing alcohol consumption and drug consumption as much as possible. I would rather live in a world where none of those exist. So you might think like, oh, but why is he for legalizing drugs if he hates drugs? Well, just because of human nature. And if we want to break this, we need to do something about demand. We can work away demand in many given ways. We can work at it at a political level. We can continue to create this culture of strength where, you don't want drugs because drugs are for fucking pathetic weak people. So then you can reduce the demand as such, and then the supply will follow. Realize that if no one wants a particular product, if no one wants to buy a prostitute, if no one wants to buy drugs, if no one wants to get drunk on cheap alcohol, the supply will drop as well. Demand and supply always follow each other. So when the demand drops, the supply will follow, which then in turn decreases the amount of drugs or whatever it is that is in circulation in the market. So I hope that makes some sort of sense at least. But to briefly recap, supply and demand will always meet each other. It's really, really hard for a state to separate the two, but what you can do is harness that very negative energy for your own benefit, for the state's benefit, and then you can spend it on fun things. Fun in this case being education, etc. And now you can also work on a meta-political level to try to destroy drug culture. And then also, like, I don't have anything against outlawing either of it, but it can be detrimental in the fact that, criminal gangs can get another source of revenue. And like legalizing drugs, this is never something I actively want to drive a policy for. I'm just throwing some thoughts out there to make you to think a bit more. So it's not like if I'm ever part of a political party, legalizing drugs will not be high on my agenda. This is just like general thoughts that are interesting to discuss, and I've got this question many times. And who am I? I'm the Lion of Wisdom. XXO.